Okay, today we're doing an interview with Mr. William Butz at the New York State Military Museum. It is Wednesday, February the 8th, 2006. The interviewers are Wayne Clark and Eric Stott. And Mr. Butz, please, for the record, please state your full name and your date and place of birth.
William C. Butz, born in Lockport, New York, September 15th, 1919.
Okay, and do you want to tell us a little bit about your parents?
Well, my father was born in Germany, and my mother was born in Scotland. And my father came over in 1911.
Okay.
At that time, we moved to Buffalo and in that area. And when the Depression came, we moved back this way to Cohoes, New York.
Okay. Now, how much of an education did you have before you entered the service?
I had to quit work to help support our family. My mother and father had 5 children, and that was in 1936. I was in the going in the senior in school in Troy High. So I had to leave there, but I did go back to night school, and for some reason during the war they couldn't find that the papers I made, the points I made in night school enough for the grade to get a, but we later you probably read it in the book where we had to take care of that later.
Okay.
Even though I got a field commission, that was when I got the regular swearing in, and they said to me, we have a little problem here. The captain said, I said, what's the problem? I've already been sworn in on a field, but the situation was I didn't get a proper swearing in, really. They said later, I had one bar on and one in my pocket. But anyway, when they said you have to have at least a high school diploma to become an officer, so I said to the captain, I didn't put this bar on. He said, don't worry, we're going to take it away from Germany. Now the war was ended as far as we were concerned.
Okay, let me go back just a minute here. Whereabouts were you, and what was your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I lived right across the road in Harrison Avenue, Glens Falls, and my wife come over where I was working. I was running the hothouses there. That was my trade back then. And she says they just bombed Pearl Harbor. Well, my brother, youngest brother, enlisted right away, immediately, in the Marines. And then the second brother followed him within 2 weeks. And then my oldest brother, he went in the Army about a year later. And this was gnawing away at me for a long time. We had one daughter. I was in 3A, and it bothered me. Half the nights I couldn't sleep. I said, those 3 boys are gone, my brothers.
And you felt left out.
And I felt a little guilty, feeling I should be in there. So I went to the sergeant down the post office in Glens Falls. So I went down there and showed him, he said, let me see your card, draft card. And it was 3A. He said, no, you can't join. And I said, I don't understand. Well, he said, you'd mess up everything anyway, but you're in 3A, you're going to have to wait. He said, I can't tell you, it might be a year or more. And you see, I was upset, and as I started out the door, I said, that's pretty good. The country's at war, and you can't go. So he said, go back in here now. He says, how bad you want to go? I said, I want to go. That's why I'm here. He says, there is a way. That's what the sergeant said. He says, "Now you take this card back, get your wife to sign it. Says, you want to be put in 1A. 10 days later, I was off and gone. It went that quick. The draft board was Waterloo, but we had moved to Glens Falls for my work, so we still mailed a letter to Waterloo draft board, and that's where I.
Okay.
And then I was already in combat when I got an envelope similar to this here from the draft service that I had sold, that I had voluntarily enlisted. And I've got that home yet. But that's where it comes, to the sending home. It's not clear to me in the service. But.
Now, you went, now, what was the date that you went into the service?
Well, I don't know the exact date.
Was it
40.
43, was it?
Early in 43.
Okay.
Very cold, very early.
Okay, and you went to Fort Sheridan for your basic?
I went down to Camp Upton.
Okay.
And then they shipped me to... And that was a funny setup. We said goodbye and everything in Glens Falls with the family. I get down to Camp Upton, and they said, well, now that you've got your papers and you're all set, you got your uniform, he says, you go home. I said, what do you mean I go home? Well, you're going to give a week's furlough. Then you report back, and no, I said, I don't want to do that. I said goodbye, and listen, I don't want to go through that again. Well, he said, that's all right, and we'll put you in a group that's going to ship out to Fort Sheridan. That's how I got to Fort Sheridan.
What was it like at Fort Sheridan?
Well, it was a big camp, and at the time they were awful good. The cadre was all from Louisiana, boys. And boy, they had funny language. Once you got to know them, they didn't like the Yankees for some reason, and I suppose that goes way back. But yet, they were good boys. They pulled a fast one on me in Camp Upton. When they stripped us and gave us the shots, and then we lined up to get our clothes. And now you had a couple of sore arms and no clothes on. As we went through the line for shots, there was a big, tall, lanky fellow in front of me, and he wouldn't look. He always looked back off to one side, and so he didn't move up. And the doctor there was ready for the first shot, see? So he stepped up and touched him on the shoulder to get his attention. Down he went, just like he was shot. Just fainted. So this should get him out of the way. But anyway, we got to the clothes part, and he said, what size shoes you wear? And I remember, I said, 8 wide. And he said, pair of 9 wides. No, I said 8. Geez, I'm sorry. He said, make that 10s. Well, geez, I didn't dare say no more. And come the shoes, and then moved down, and they'd been long OD coats. You know your sizes? Yeah. And I told him, he made it a size larger. I didn't say nothing. Got all the clothes. We put them on, then you line up, and here comes the major. Now he stopped right in front of me, looked me up and down. He said, soldier, don't you know your size? Well, boy, before I could say a word, he was on his way. But these guys in Fort Sheridan, they took care of me. They said, boy, I feel sorry for you in a way. Tomorrow we're going on a 20-mile hike. And he says, I can't do nothing about, I can take the shoes if they're returnable. I said, well, what's returnable? Oh, they got to be in conditions they can't be wore, like split open and something like that. You know, I said, but he said, I'll tell you what to do. We'll give you a couple extra pairs of socks and try to get them on for the hike. And he says, take the other pair tonight and put them in soapy GI soapy water and soak them a while, and then put them out in the back of the barracks. Is the sunny part of the barracks. And the sun will be out tomorrow. And he says, I think maybe by tomorrow night we might be able to do something to them shoes. And the toes they jumped on and I split across the toe. He said, they're no good. He said, bring them down. He said, make sure you get the right size. And the coat, they put 6 guys on the big part of the coat and 6 on the sleeve, and boy, they had a tug of war. an awful job ripping the sleeve of that coat. So I got a new coat. But that's too bad that stuff happened.
Yeah.
That's just the way it happened. And by the way, when this wasn't intended to be a book, it was supposed to be something for the grandchildren and family.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way I done it. And what happened to me, and that's why it's wrote like that. That's why all these things are down. But the Fort Sheridan, while I was there, my brother stopped in once, the oldest brother. He wound up on a barrage blown and stationed in England.
Mm-hmm.
And right near where we loaded the LSTs in Southampton, they had them balloons up way high to stop the German planes from
Mm-hmm.
coming in with the cables that cut their wings, you know. But they'd shoot some balloons down, they put more back up. But I never saw my two younger brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They went in the 1st and 3rd Marines, but they met in Bougainville. I got a letter that they had a chance to meet once in Bougainville.
Okay. Now, where did you go after Fort Sheridan?
We went to Camp Davis, North Carolina, and then
Well, what kind of training did you get at Fort Davis?
just to continue with they put us in half-tracks with automatic weapons battalion.
Mm-hmm.
And that was half-tracks. The first track had 450s, and they call it a section, 2 to a section. And we had 8 sections in our company. But anyway, that's 16 tracks. But anyway, the second one had a 37 cannon with a twin 50s. That's just 250, 50 on each side. But they were operated by 2 men and the gunner. The man on the right, he could only crank the guns to the right. The man on the left could only crank it to the left. The gunner, he called the shots and elevated the gun.
Now, what was your job?
Well, I was a sergeant, so I rode on the track with the radio at that time.
Okay.
Until I got staff sergeant, then I was given the Jeep.
Did you do a lot of training and go on a lot of maneuvers there?
Maneuvers to Tennessee, that's why we got overseas quick. We went to Tennessee maneuvers, and first we went into Campbell, Kentucky for equipment. We went into Tennessee maneuvers, and anyway, they come to me one day. The Blue and Red Army was, the battles were over there, but they come around, they're going to have a big inspection with a brigadier general. And he said, this guy is sharp. So I said, I was a buck sergeant then, I said to the man, I said, I'll tell you, we got the net over, I thought was pretty good. We had trouble getting it one side over long enough so when you come up, you wouldn't look right into the half track. And I said, now, we're going to dig these holes, deep fox holes. And we went 5 of them right around the back of the track was over towards the swamp. We knew we wouldn't come in that way. So we're heading around the front, and I said, now, when they got them all dug in a big pile of dirt for each hole, I said, now I want you to take all the dirt and get rid of it. What are we going to do? Yes, they hollered. I said, now, I want it out of here. I don't know mountain. Carry it in that swamp and dump it there. So they worked in there all night, sweating and cursing. And then we put fine twigs across the hole. And there was a lot of nice short fern there. And we got it just enough twigs to hold that fern. And it looked pretty good. It wouldn't in 2 or 3 days be wilting bad, but it looked good. And pretty soon, I had a guy way out by the dirt road. He come running, he says, I think they're coming. So I was up on the half track, and I looked, the general stepped out. Our captain was with him, and the general had an orderly, and he followed the general, and the captain behind him, and they're heading right for one of the holes. My first thought was, said, hey, whoa. No, I said, that'll spoil it. The next thing you know, he let out a holler and down he went in the hole. Well, I tried to turn, I didn't want him to see me smiling, but then I began to, geez, he come out of there, so Hardly pulled him out, and he busted dirt out. Who's in charge here? And our captain says, I'll take care of him. He says, you keep out of this, to the captain. He says, I want to shake his hand. So I'm walking towards him then and give him a salute. And he says, congratulations, Sergeant. He said, this is a hell of a good job. He turned around to Captain, our captain, he says, look, I seen enough, let's go back in. And the next day, we got a report that we had, I think it was a 98% rating.
Mm-hmm.
And that was enough. They says, oh boy. We got back to camp and we loaded up and went to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey, ready for overseas. And the guys kidded me. They even kidded me all the way across the sea. Hey, Butz, there's a general in your foxhole. I never forgot that. They never let go of that one. But then we landed in, we went on the New Amsterdam, which is, I figured, one of the biggest ships, except the Queen Mary. And you know,
Was it a passenger ship converted for
it was
carrying
New
troops?
Amsterdam at 14,500 when we were loaded. But when we went in, with your pack and rifle and all, you'd hang on that gangplank and it almost looked like straight up. Daylight come and I couldn't believe it. I could not believe it. If we had to get off that ship then, I'd have to do the same way, get the other way. Instead of the gangplank this way, that's how much that ship went down.
Mm-hmm.
But they had pipes that big pumping fuel oil in here all night long. I don't know how many gallons of fuel must have went. All the supplies, all night to load up. And troops steady going on. I think there was 3 gangplanks along the side of that.
Now, did you cross in a convoy or single ship?
Because we had enough speed.
Okay.
Made it 7 days. But anyway, we were backing up, and I looked over the side, and them tugs down there looked like little toys. And they were bucking and pushing on that big New Amsterdam. You had to turn just right. And there was a big foghorn blast. Boy, I looked back, and here comes the Queen Mary. Pulled in there. Well, we got turned around, and they started us out, and then we took out slowly. But anyway, 7 days later, we pulled into Glasgow. Before that, being we could fire a gun, they put us, my men, on they had a 3-inch gun. The 6, I didn't, that was on the other side. I don't know who was on that, but the 3-inch, and they dropped a smoke pot when we got out 2 or 3 days on the trip. And you would fire at that to see if it was, how close you'd come.
Mm-hmm.
We never hit it, but that wasn't really about that big smoke coming. But we come close. But we had a badge, we could go anywhere in that ship, and boy, I couldn't believe it. I can't tell you how many decks there was. But there's one thing that bothered me. We could go anywhere in the ship, so I said to this corporal of mine, I said, hey, what do you say, we're off duty, let's go down and look the ship over. And we kept going down, and it got noisier and noisier. We must have been getting near the engine room. And the last deck, it was a straight down, like a fire escape.
Mm-hmm.
When I first looked in there, I couldn't believe it. I said, Corporal, take a look there. And the guys had their shirts on. They were all black, the black shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
And they were playing cards and dice. And boy, it must have been hot. It had what was on our arm. And of course, you were near the engine, you could hear them.
Yeah.
And I thought then, I said, boy, torpedo ever hit this thing, I don't know. But I don't think today you'd see anything like that, you know. But, well, anyway, we landed in Glasgow. There was a submarine ported off Ireland. We never saw it, but boy, could you see our wake. Ding, ding, ding. Boy, how that stood for a mile back of the ship. You could look out and see.
Mm-hmm.
Where it wasn't as sharp as it looked in the wake because you didn't hardly feel it. But boy, when you could see the wake behind you, you could tell how they were, but nothing ever come of it. So I don't even know if it was a foreign or American sub. But we landed in Glasgow, and that was a long hike from the docks we unloaded to the train station. We had to hike, load up our packs and stuff, and then go to the train station. And then we went from there to near Southampton. Put up pup tents in the field, and we were next to a pretty good sized airport. And these bombers, every day, we'd count as they go out in a group.
Mm-hmm.
Now this was in April.
Of 44.
44. And they go out, we done a lot of training there. Yeah, they fired machine guns over your head, which they didn't do in the state, that we did in there. And I tell you, you get pretty close to the ground. They didn't have to tell me to keep my head down. But anyway, we trained there, and then we count these bombers. One day, there was 24 in that group, and we all counted as they come in. This was just one day, and there was 24 come back. That's the only time I ever saw them. So I know what they were going through. One day it was 12 and 113 in the group that come back. And I don't know, Larry could probably tell you, now that one of these commercial planes today, if there's a little nut of voltness and the plane might crash or something, but there's holes that big in them.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing to see them come with only 2 motors out of the 4. Just skimming low and just making the cliffs and coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And wounded after wounded in the plane's end anyway, taking them out. But yeah, that was the 8th Air Force. And they supported us too.
Now, where did you go after Southampton?
We stayed in that area.
You stayed right there.
2 or 3 times they had us. We never got in the invasion, but 2 or 3 times it was kind of a marked run.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get down there, and then for nothing, this was a game, I guess, in case of. But all our mail was held up and censored anyway.
Now, you were with the 1st Army at that point, right?
Well, we weren't attached to the 6th Army yet.
Mm-hmm.
We went in. We joined really the 6th and the 3rd in France.
Okay. So you were basically a replacement unit.
Well, I don't know what you call a replacement, but they had to have so many half tracks.
Okay.
And we trained with armor in the States, and our maneuvers was all the same, so it was nothing new to me to what we were with.
Okay.
And then after St. Lo, they brought Patton in, and it was a big area. He gave a talk there, and boy, I'll tell you, he was, to my estimation, the greatest general ever lived. But his vocabulary, his language was something else. Mm-hmm. And a couple of places in the book I put in, and I was going to have it taken out. And then my daughter said, "Listen, Dad, you're quoting him.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he said. If you take it out, then you're taking something away that you actually saw." And
right.
so that's in there somewhere. And 3 times the first time I seen him in combat was when the 8th Air Force dropped we were tipped off that it was coming. We ran out of gas. First time we ran out of gas. Trying to cut that Brest Peninsula across. Now that peninsula, they figured was 100,000 Germans on there. And if we could cut across and cut it off. That was the main supply to the Brest submarine bend.
Mhm.
Cut that road and everything else off. And we carried 2 6x6 gas trucks, 5-gallon cans, stacked right to the rack. But one of them got hit by a Tiger tank, so we lost one shortly after we started the drive.
Now, was that the first time you came under fire?
Oh, no, we were way back by St. Lo.
Okay.
And then the first bombing we really got bombed hard was at the Avalanche Bridges.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, it was a funny thing. There was one tank in front of me and a tank right behind my half-track. And it was June, the last of June, hot and dry. Might have been 1 or 2 days in August. But anyway, that before night, they wouldn't cross the bridge. They said they're waiting for engineers to check and see if it's ready to blow. It looked pretty good to me, but and then to the right of us there was a railroad bridge. Well, I'd say to the right, probably 100 yards to the right. And anyway, they kept piling in. The troops kept coming in behind us. There was no incoming artillery at the time. And that's kind of spooky. If somebody's shooting at you, at least you'll know where they are. So I didn't like that, but I could hear planes, and I looked way up there. I took a picture, of course it looked like specks in the sky. But anyway, I called our captain. With field glass, you could see the Iron Crosses. I said, hey, you see those German planes circling? Yeah, he said, they ain't doing nothing, they ain't hurting us. I said, I don't like it. And they ain't up there for nothing. And that was an hour before dark, maybe. In the ditches, there were some logs laying, and in front of that bridge, right in front of it, they must have jackhammered the road out.
Mm-hmm.
About that wide, right across. And then I put 2 and 2 together. I said, look at these logs in the ditch. These are just as smooth as glass. I don't know what kind of wood it was. And I said, I'll bet we come up here on them too fast. I'll bet you they're going to stick them right and splat in front of that bridge, to barricade the bridge thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, about dark, just after dark, they put out a word that you better put bayonets on your rifles. They caught already a couple Germans wading across the stream.
Mm-hmm.
So there's enemies infiltrate and watching. And they even caught one guy with a baggy camouflage, and he had grenades loaded, carrying the grenades. So anyway, was kind of alerted to that. And all of a sudden I heard this engine, and it was right above me, overhead. And I don't know why to this day, I says, there it comes. I knew, never had that experience before in my life. I know there was a bomb coming.
Mm-hmm.
That plane had powered and pulled out of there, and kaboom! Heads rose and dust, and boy, I thought I flew that high up in the air. It was the first time I'd done anything like that. And boy, I'll tell you.
Was anyone in your group injured from that?
Not in that first bomb run, I don't think there was. But a flare went out. The Germans fired a flare, and it drifted and drifted, and I watched it, and it lit up that railroad bridge. And that was the best thing that ever happened. The next wave of bombing, they plastered that railroad bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was getting pretty hot around there, and I says to the guy in the tank, he kept breaking and spun around. He pulled over on the side. I don't know why he didn't like where he was. Now this left a clear shot for me. And we had a big camouflage net on the front of that half-track. That was my headquarters track with the radio and stuff. But with all the bombing and everything, you look white, covered with dust. When I was laying in the ditch, I heard the rustle in this hedgerow alongside the ditch. Well, I just stuck them one up. And I'll never forget, it was one of the black men, boys that called Red Ball Express. They come up with the gas.
Oh, yeah.
To gas us up. And he had a carbine in his hand that looked like a toy. And he went up like that and looked down. Don't shoot, he says, I was American soldier. Well, I jumped up on the half-track and I said to the driver, let's get out of here. He said, I can't look behind it. I can't move. I said, it's all open. Let's go. He says, you mean it? I said, cross. Well, the black fella jumped on the camouflage net after he come out of the ditch when he see where I started up. He must have saw the other tank go back. Well, anyway, we started. That little thing, there was nothing for that tank to run across that. And he hollered something, sounded like, you know, the wrong way or something. He got off and run. Well, we went across, and when I said to my driver, I said, I'm going to tell you, when we get across here, don't stay the direction we're going. Either right or left, the first chance, whatever looks the best. Well, the Germans got hit there probably from our Air Corps because it was a truck that was blown up and there was several bodies in the road, bloated. So these guys, they must have pulled out quite a while ahead, but we didn't know that. But anyway, the tank driver, or the half-track driver, he pulled and twisted that thing around, but he hit one. And I'm in the turret looking around, and boy, I thought I was going to die. That's an awful thing, the juice of a bloated body. And we did see an opening to the left. And I said, pull in there. There was only a little bit of a town, like something like Victory Mills. But we never went through it. We pulled to the left and went out in this open field. I called on the radio and told him. He says, the captain said something about, well, you got company over there? I said, no, we don't have nothing. And it took, I guess he wasn't convinced yet. It took quite a while, and one by one they shot across. But in the meantime, I put guards out down the road, outposted. And one of them come running to me, he says, hey, Sarge, he says, there's tanks coming. I said, oh boy, good night. We're over here with a half-track, nothing else. So I said, take the bazooka, we had 2 bazookas, and grenades, and run down, get in the bushes along the ditch there. And here they come. And boy, it was a 4th Armor. And when I see them guys, boy, I'll tell you, what a relief. Yep, it was a 4th Armor. And they, what are you doing here? And they were tough, the 4th Armor. And that was Patton's favorite division, next to the 6th. And we fought side by side in a lot of battles, the 4th and the 6th. But anyway, they said, what are you doing here? I think they were put out to see somebody there, see, really. And then when we assembled there, we made the plans to make a sharp right. By the way, the town, a couple of civilians come out, and they were told my gunner, he was a Levesque, he was a Frenchman, and he could talk French pretty good. And because he's from up in French Canadian, out of Maine. But anyway, he says they told the Germans they just pulled out. There isn't any more in the town. So that was we could have went over the minute we hit that there. We would have got them before they dug in. Later, the ones that went straight across had suffered because from it. But anyway, we turned right, and then that would put us, the Brest Peninsula, here's a river, and then the river turned here, but the Brest Peninsula was way down in the end of the peninsula, and Patton figured if he could cut across there and cut that off. Now this there was a lot of miles involved. We started, I wasn't on the point at the start of that. I was in Combat Command A, but they had a point built up of, I don't know why. Most of the time I put a light tank, and whether that's faster to maneuver than put that in the lead. But a light tank started out, and then when they mixed I had 2 sections down of half tracks, that's 4 of them, and I had to mix them in, so many tank destroyers, so many tanks, so many armored infantry, 44th was with us. It was a regular combat command day. And our objective was cut right straight across. The B was going to go down to the right and then filter across that way. But anyway, it was tough going. The further we went, it eased up. And it looked like Patton, he always figured if you can keep moving, there'll be less casualties. And it was, I felt sorry some days for the infantry. 35th Division followed us. And some days you could hear like a regular full-scale battle going on behind us. And they let us know about it more than once.
Mm-hmm.
Usually at night, the 35th would pull up, go out around all our armor, and dig in. And we could get a little bit shut-eye, not too long, but we get some. But they were enough to talk to them, these guys. And they said, geez, don't you guys ever knock out anything? Geez, we're running into anti-tank guns. Yeah, I said, if there's a moving vehicle, we'll run them down. But Patton told her, don't hold up for machine gun or anti-tank gun. Or he didn't want it foot by foot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way he operated. He wanted us, go around it, but keep going.
Now, did you ever personally see Patton yourself?
Yes, this was the first time I saw him. When we run out of gas because the second day on the drive, our casualties wasn't too bad at that point. On the second day, that night before, we were supposed to stop and dig in, like we usually do on a night. And then they come up with the supplies, the Red Wall Express we call them, bring up the gas, and ammunition trucks will come up. But Patton changed the plan. He says, we got these guys on the run. Full speed ahead. Well, I don't know whether he knew that one gas truck was already picked off, or the Tiger tank picked that off. So we had 2 30-gallon tanks, and I told the driver how we stand. He said, I'm already on the second tank. Oh boy, this here is in the night. And I said, I'll tell you what, keep a good eye on that second tank. When it's low, you take the right side of the road. I give the next section to me, the same order, but you take the left, the next one take the right. We want to spread out whatever we can. And just before daylight was about as far as we were going to go. Well, we scattered across, spread out as much as we could. Artillery come in. They knew where we were. They spotted us. A lot of 88. This is coming from way back. Luckily, no mortars yet. I said, well, they're not too close. Or we're getting the mortar fire, but we're getting a lot of 88 fire. And they come over the radio that there'll be gas being dropped to us. Well, I knew what them pair bundles were from England. They were long, they had 10 5-gallon cans, a bundle longer than this table, a little wider. It'd be about that height. And they were, when the canvas was shut, tied shut, they put 2 straps, canvas straps, completely around it with buckles, buckled and tight. Well, I'm glad I see that in England, what they look like. We carried a boot knife, and they were sharper. A boot knife was sharper as a razor. And when the first P-47 dropped the things, they went right to the Germans. Well, we waved and everything from our armor. And the second ones dropped a little shorter. 2 landed about, I'd say, 100, 150 feet the most. That was close. To the tank in front of, it was a tank in front of me about 30, 40 feet. And our track, and then there was about 100 feet to the next vehicle. Well, anyway, I said, boy, 2 bundles, that'll take care of both of us, both the tank and our half-track. Well, I said to the corporal, as you follow me. Oh, just after they dropped, here come this car. It has, I'd say, like a siren. It was Patton, an armored car. And he jumped out and ran up and down that ditch. Everybody's in the ditch because the 88 shelling coming in.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't got it. We're waiting on the gas. Well, he let out a beller. He says, what the hell do you think this is, a Sunday school picnic? Get after that, get that gas. And boy, he belted it out. So I then said to the corporal, I said, you follow me. And I'm not sitting out there with all this shrapnel and buckling them straps. I said, this snifle. So I rear ran full run, and I come right down, and when I hit into the first one, I went too deep, and the gas was spurting out. I hit it too hard, so then you could hear it rattle right along the metal, cut it open. The corporal was yanking out 2 pails of cans of it, and I come back and grab the next one, and then we run, and I said to him, well, you start getting the gas in. I'll go back and get 2 more. Well, the guys in the tank already got a couple, and they were pouring it in. And when they started dropping in some mortars, I said, oh, brother, they're getting close to it. So when the mortars come in, I hit the ground with the gas, 2 cans of gas, and I happened to look up, and the guy in the tank that was pouring the gas, he flew over backwards. And where the tank fell, I said, oh boy, he's hit. Another tanker, he jumped down and grabbed the gas quick. He was losing gas.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thought was, look at that. That gas is more important than that soldier. Then I said, he's got to be killed instantly. And I didn't know till I talked to that guy about a day and a half later. That same tank, he said, yeah, he was hit by his ear. He said, you put your fist in. He said he never knew what hit him. The minute we see it, nothing you could do. But anyway, I remember that, and then we got gassed up. And by then, we got a lot of machine gun fire, mortar fire. So we didn't move ahead too fast for quieting down. They got they asked for how far is the next track I got with the 450s. They wanted that brought right up. Well, you could put 450s in there, and I guess Larry could tell you what damage a 50 cal is. It's quite a gun, and you got 4 of these. We learned, there's one bad feature though with that half-track. And Patton found that out, and I lost a lot of men after that. But the 450s was in an armored turret.
Mm-hmm.
The gunner was protected. The man on each side that sat on the floor of the track, when we had the chest started with different amounts of ammunition, so they didn't 4 run out at once. So that guy on this side would take care of 2 chests, 1 for each gun, and the one on this side take care of these 2 chests. We had armor on the side of the half-track, a plate of steel of armor in the front, a 1/2 inch, 1/4 on the sides, nothing on the back. Now, when we wanted to shoot at a plane coming at us, there was no problem. But if you went any lower, the guns would automatically stop. You couldn't fire them
Mm-hmm.
because you had to mend the cab. That was a safety.
Right.
But you also couldn't be fired to shoot into the hedgerows and count on that. You could only get to the side.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that day he found that out. But later on, in the hedgerow country we got into, the orders come that Patton wanted our half-tracks with the 450s to back down the sunken roads. But that didn't last only about 2 days. We lost a lot of men. there was no protection, rifle shot or machine gun fire. A lot of, some deaths, but mostly wounded. And because there was no chance in there. But anyway, he must have remembered that that day. I said, well, we're all right. I said, but we can't. You can't what? I said, we can't depress over the calf. And I guess he checked out with our General Grow. He was in charge of our division, and they must have talked it over because it wasn't later on, towards Nancy, that we got into a lot of hedgerows, and that's when they held us back down, which wasn't a very good. Well, otherwise you'd have to make the half track so high it wouldn't have been any good anyway. You know, then you would probably be all right to shoot over the head, but that was one of the faults of the half track. And then later on in the cold weather we had more problems. But
no, that was during the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, first, out of Nancy, they had a rumor out the war was going to be over by Christmas. Everybody was pretty happy. But boy, after Thanksgiving, and by the way, we got a Thanksgiving turkey they promised. They rolled up through that mud. We were all dug in for a week. Rain, rain, rain. The tanks couldn't do nothing. So the foxhole we made, I said to the guys, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll start down about 2 feet on one end, and then go out about 2 feet, then go down 4 feet. Later we go deeper. Well, what's the idea of this? I said, so we can, with all this water, I said, we can sit down, maybe take a nap, the water get up to your knees, and then you better start bailing. And that's just the way it turned out. And this went on. Well, one day here come an armored car, 6-wheel drive, and they come across through the mud. There's your Thanksgiving turkey. And I rolled that thing up, and it's just like you would buy it today, in a plastic bag froze solid. And it's a good thing with plastic, because you just bail some water from the hole and just flash the mud off.
So it wasn't cooked?
No, it wasn't cooked. I said, well, they said we get turkey, and that was quite a story, and I put it in there too, because we had a stove there, and trying to heat that, and I hacked off the frozen legs, and put them in a canteen cup, you know how big they are, and try to heat it up enough, and boil and boil. And finally the guy said, oh boy, I think it's ready. So I said, here, you try it first. He chewed and handed it right around. Well, when it got to me, geez, the liquor was all bloody. Why, they ate the outside. It was cooked enough to eat until it went back in the can, and then, boy, they said, well, next day, they said, hey, we're going to pull out. And they tied that thing on a half track and for the rest of the frozen. It was heaved later. We never got no tanker. Never got no hot meal. But anyway, out of there, they sent us down to Colmar Pocket. There was a lot of coal mines, and the Germans were putting up an awful battle to hold them mines. Well, they said after about 2 days of combat, quite a lot of, by the way, half our casualties were from shrapnel. But that increased 20% when we got to the Bulge, because of the soft ground to go deep, and then the shells, you had a good chance. But when the ground was froze, they went this way, because they're set, you know, to go off in a certain, and that was, boy, we noticed right away how the casualties were mounting up there in the Bulge. But anyway, so in the Colmar Pocket, it got to be December, I think it was the 17th. The word said that the 35th Foot Division's coming in and relieve us, take us off the line. And I thought right away, we already heard the rumor, but nothing official, but the Germans had broke through our lines up north. And a big breakthrough, yet they didn't call it the Bulge right then, we heard about it. But they know then. there was something big going on. But they pulled us back, and we loaded up, gassed up. We drove all night, half the day. Then they pushed them. We had white engines in our half-tracks, and they pushed them things, so boy, they were red hot. But they had so much antifreeze in there that it could take it, you know. But they was hot and overheated. But we got into Metz. Not the whole division, just Combat Command A. By now, I think it was I'm on the 23rd of December. We were gassed and got our ammunition, and they formed a feeler, a part of the Combat Command A, which I was in. It was just to see the division was coming behind us, heading for Metz, the whole 6th Army. And our object was to go up and see what to expect. Well, we got into it. We got in pretty deep. When we went through the outfits that were dug in on the south end of the Bulge, artillery was already coming in, 88s, and they had to talk it over with their men in charge. Had a big, quick meeting that we were going to go through their lines. And it's a good thing that we're there, because after about a 6 or 8 hour battle, we were getting low on supplies, ammunition, and evidently the Germans had decided maybe to get the Bastogne better, they could come down deeper and go around. They already had Bastogne circled. From where we were at that position, on the 23rd, we could hear them pounding Bastogne, pretty heavy. That would have been to my left and north a little. I don't know the name of this town it was in. But anyway, it was a good thing what happened, even though we got hit pretty bad, because our big radios called back division. By now they had reached Metz on the next day. They reached Metz. They quickly were changing. We had rubber tread, which that's another thing we tipped them off. We couldn't get over on the snow and ice. By the way, there was no snow in Metz yet, and we walked right into the heavy snow and freezing weather. When I froze my feet, it was down below zero. I don't know what the...
Now, did you have any kind of winter gear or any kind of protection?
No,
Nothing.
We made a mistake down in southern France. Our feet were sweating, so we got an idea if we cut a slit on each side of our boots, we'd let a little air in there. And it worked. Well, little we know, in a few weeks we're going to be wading through 2 and 3 feet of snow. And that was the worst thing, it just pushed in the cracks. Mm-hmm. And then trench feet was running rampant. Lots of our men were sent to England with trench foot. And I was scared to death. I said, why does it come from? They said, well, this is even after my frozen feet. And they said, well, it comes from not their feet clean enough. Well, Jesus, you can forget showers. That's never unheard of. And how are you going to wash your feet and you only had 2 pairs of socks? Mm-hmm. So, and my feet are soaked anyway. So I found out something. I said, I'll be careful. And I packed this snow in the sock and squeezed it. And shook it out. Then I turned the sock inside and filled up with snow again. And I squeezed it some more and shake it out. Mm-hmm. Then I opened my shirt, had winter underwear and tank pants on, and slide that wet sock in there. And boy, it was cold. But the next day, boy, I had a nice, dry, warm pair of socks. Mm-hmm. So all through that, that's what I done. Everybody else had other ideas, and some guys had extra socks. They must have bought them, and all I read was two. And then we ruined one pair because we had no mittens. We took a sock and put it on and made a hole for your finger.
So you weren't issued gloves or anything?
Not then,
okay.
No. And no snow cape. When Patton, that's another thing why I like Patton. And Luxembourg, the first 3 or 4 towns we captured, retook away from the Germans. Patton noticed the Germans all had capes. My first snow cape was off a dead German, but he didn't need it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, when you got everything white, you're sticking out like a sore thumb. They weren't. They had the cape. So when he see the situation, we heard that he sent men into town, these towns that we took, round up the women in town, told the mayors there, he wants them women to take their bed sheets and pillowcases and tear them up and make capes from his men. So the first bunch of capes we come from one of them towns. It was the snow, the Bulge was starting to go pretty fast when the shipment come of Army, capes made for our Army from the States. And then we got the big gloves that come way up to here and had mittens on them gloves and a trigger finger. But they come late. Many of our men took boots off dead Germans too.
Mm-hmm.
So if they could find anything close to wear.
Now at some point you were wounded too, weren't you?
I was wounded before the Bulge.
Do you want to tell us about how that happened?
That was in November, I'd say about the third week in November. And we were in a situation where the only ones that left the vehicle, we already lost 3 vehicles were mines. And by the way, that was the first time I see something that we never had. As we were working, helping them find the mines, the smart boys, this major said, I got the smart boys, we'll dig them out. Don't you guys touch them, but flag them. On the marching with a red flag.
Okay.
And marching with flags, so, but we lost a lot of men. The major said to me, how many men you got? And I said, 32. He says, good, I can use them. He says, to help get the, I said, oh, we know nothing about that. I said, well, you're mine detectors. You ain't got to touch a mine. Here's the red flags to flag them. Well, we cleared maybe, I would say, 100 yards of that sunken road. And guess what? Turned around and boom, 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 just like that. These big trees on both sides of the road. Boom, 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 right up. The whole thing fell right into all that area we had cleared. Well, they had them cartridge, I call them cartridge belts, that's what they look like, the Germans. And they could put them around a tree. If they wanted the tree to fall over towards Larry, it'd go around lower towards Larry.
Okay, let me stop you here. We're going to change tapes. Okay, we're rolling again. All right, did you want to continue?
Well, after losing that many men, I got a hold of him on the radio and he says, well, this is when I didn't have an officer. I lost 4 weeks probably before that. The second officer was hit. And then we went out without an officer. But they told me that, I just radioed in and told him that he was, in code, he would be able 1. I was able 1's assistant, so I just sent the message that able 1's no longer with us. We're going on as planned. And so they caught up to me that day before, and then he left. First lieutenant back from headquarters, he got out of there before any really bad shelling started, well, like mortars coming in. Anyway, so the process was in of getting me a battlefield commission. So it was quite a while. It was after the Bulge before they ever caught up to me. They were looking, Patton was moving around so fast. He said, well, they were looking in the 1st Army or the 7th Army running to them down below Comer Pocket. And that was a big hoodoo. our outfit got to that bridgehead at Osthofen.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing you know, here comes in the whole Patton's, Patch's 7th Army, and he says, "You're in our territory." Just like that. All I got is rations. I got a big shock. So how many men you got? And it's a case of beer for each man. I said, I never see beer all the time I was overseas. 3rd Army never give you no ration of beer, but 7th did. So, so that's all I got out of that. But anyway, after this, getting back to this mines, teller mines, they said my orders were dig in where we are and hold. We're going to get you replacements. Just dig in. Well, there wasn't much choice around there to dig in. At least it was above where all the trees were laying. So I dug in the bank here. And I dug maybe 3 or 4, it was tough, hard, but I put the shovel over as we were picking. I dug 3 or 4 chunks out of there, and boy, a mortar hit the tree. And it knocked me right down, but I didn't feel nothing, you know. Geez, I got up, I got the shovel again, and then something ain't right. Geez, I reached around and I had tank pants on, and then ODs underneath, and I felt a rip there. And then I worked my hand through and it came out and it was all blood. I said, geez, I guess I'm hit. And just as I realized I was hit, I looked down and here comes the 6 replacements. All shiny uniform. And it makes you sick. I said, look at them. They couldn't hear me with all the stuff going on too far in the back. But they didn't want to come up in a sense, and they were bunched up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a mortar hit, and then the medics told me, I see it from where I was. No more, it didn't look to me any movements at all after that second barrage of mortars. And when the medics got to me, he says, your replacements? He said, well, you're not going to get any. I said, I guess so. I guess not. So anyway, one of the medics, they ripped the pants around, and there was a hole. I wish I should have kept that wallet, where the shrapnel went right through the wallet, went through everything. And one of them said, I can see it. And geez, they pulled it out, then it hurt, after he pulled it, and it was about that big. And it was a point of a mortar with a swastika on it.
Wow.
So I got that home, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But he put that in my pocket as a souvenir. The other medic pulled out my dog tags. I said, what are you doing? Oh, he said, we got to get information to send your family. I said, don't you do that. He said, why? I said, my wife's due to have a baby. The baby was born the 10th, a few days before, but I didn't know it. By the way, I didn't find out till that girl was 6 weeks old when I got the word. That's how bad the mail was. But anyway, he thought he got all patched me up. He said, you'll have to ride the Jeep to field hospital. They got set up. Well, the Jeep, they helped me up, and I said, geez, I'm all right, I can walk. And the Jeep that was stopped had 2 men on the hood, 2 stretchers, and 2 stretchers on the back. So I grabbed and hung on the side. Now anyway, we got to this field hospital, and boy, they told us, you know, if you got a leg hanging around, lay it on there, because they do wonderful things. Well, them 2 doctors, they were just nothing but blood. And geez, while they were waiting to take care of these guys that they just brought in, boy, they had zip, zip, zip tourniquets and dope them up, shot a needle, and right off the table into an ambulance. Then they went from there, I guess, to field hospital. So when I looked around, I could see a few arms and legs laying along inside the tent, where they figured that was the best bet to save them, I suppose. But anyway, I says to the guys, you don't need me, I'm going to take care of it. Let's take a look. And he said, well, look, you're going to have to be careful with that for infection. It looks like the medics did a good job, but he says, I'll give you some extra sulfa. So they give me some of that. And he says, now wait a minute. You can go back with the next ambulance and ride back for a rest. You'll probably keep you there a few days. I said, no. I want to go back in the next Jeep. I want to go back with my men. I still got some men up there. Well, he said, that's up to you, but you don't have to. I said, I'm going back up there. So they had, under that table was cupboards. And one of them doctors said, wait a minute, get your canteen cup off. He slid it open, he come out with a bottle of scotch. And boy, he put about half of it. He said, you need a drink if you're open. Boy, so I had quite a drink. But when I got back up there, the orders come in, they said, listen, we're going to be relieved. We're pulling back, the equipment's in bad shape, even though it was behind us. Boy, the ammunition chests were jammed in, and you couldn't get the 50 caliber belts to run. Well, what good are the guns if the ammunition won't? So we were hit pretty hard there. And I'm thankful we didn't lose any more men. Of course, by then they were dug in while I was getting taken care of. And then, to make a long story short on that shrapnel, years and years later, I went in the ministry, in the prison ministry, 20 years ago. Comstock Prison found more shrapnel. He says, give me the medal right now. I said, I don't have no medal. He said, this machine don't lie. And I said, well, I'll tell you. I'll take my clothes off. And he said, were you on the war? I said, yeah. Were you hit? Where were you hit? And when I reached around, he said, you still got some in you. Until sure enough, now I noticed the planes picking up right away, if you were going a plane. But they thought that's all there was, that one piece. But evidently there was a little piece with it.
Now, you were wounded a second time, too?
Second time I shot through the leg on the hedgerows. It went through the boot, clean through, no bone. It was sore, but it healed up fairly good. And the guy said, well, you're going to get a Silver Star tonight. I went like that. He said, what's that? I said, they ain't reaching rain like that. I said, you know, by the way, they did send it home. And my wife got the notice I was going in action. After they said, no, we'll take care of that. We just wanted to put you down so you get a Silver Star, Purple Heart. So that's why they took the information. But they were going to leave out sending to your family, but they didn't somehow.
But you did end up with a Silver Star, correct?
Yeah. That was on the Brest Peninsula. I didn't get a pinned army till the war ended, but I was told by our company commander on a 3-day rest, he said, boy, Butz, you done one hell of a job. Everything fell in line with the report. I said, what fell in line with what report? He said, well, you're awarded a Silver Star. He says, we found the armored car with the dead lieutenant, just where you said it was. We found a machine gun and just about the amount of men you figured. They said it was there. And but there again, a medal is not. It's not a hero when you win a medal. A hero didn't come home. That day, this machine gun opened up after the bazooka went by, and the next one hit that armored car in front of me and killed the lieutenant. That driver ran back and says, are you in charge? I said, what do you mean I'm in charge? I'm just a sergeant. He said, well, is there anybody higher than a sergeant here? Well, there wasn't. So, so my best thing was that I don't know nothing more. We took the wrong road miles back. Because that lieutenant called me up in the dark and said, get down on the ground, feel this. Down in the armored car. He said, what are you? I said, they're tank tractors. They went this way. If we walked, either one of us, "30 feet more, there was no track." The whole column of tanks in front of us, a mile of them, turned to the right. They left the tank for guard, and we were too slow behind. They thought we were gone. They didn't know there's anybody. So he pulled out one with the tank. If we would have walked down that road, we'd have known shortly. And we kept going, went right through a town, full of Germans. I said, what? The reason it was midnight when we went through the first town and had a shot. And I said, geez, I wonder why they left their cars all camouflaged. They must have thought, they must have heard us. But they never fired a shot on that. They must have thought it was their men heading for Brest. We were right on the road heading right to Brest. Of course, they They had, and we were 7 miles from the front end, that far. And then, so little by little, we put all the wounded in the truck, and I says, had an awful time going ahead and back up, go ahead, back up, back, to get them turned and get the wounded out of here. But before got the machine gun opened up, before we get everything done, and this fellow was talking to here. He was a corporal on that, with that driver for that lieutenant, and one of my men was this side. And when that machine gun opened up, right through us, right through the hedgerow, he went down, and I stood there. And to myself, I said, geez, not bad. Here I am, I'm gone, but I don't even know it. I don't feel nothing. Then I looked up the column and I see the tracers coming back. Down again, I said, something ain't right, and I dove right in the ditch and went right over my head. Well, then I only had to go about 30 feet to our half-track and get that it was back. Them guns on that track, we couldn't fire that way. And I said, don't fire ahead. I figured a mile of our men are in front. They weren't, but I didn't know. But anyway, I was so scared that that gun was just after me, nobody else. Mm-hmm. And that's the only reason today, I'll tell you the truth, that I figured that guy's going to get me or I'm going to get him. And just fed a rage, or you do that. And I threw the 2 grenades, and the gun stopped. And then the first report was they told the Germans there, and they found it. So he said everything was verified, but I didn't get that pinned down till the end of the war. And when they pinned them on, the 3 medals at once, you know what went through my mind? Points. Mm-hmm. They're allowed, you had to have 80, the war's over then, you had to have 87 points or more. First one to go home. They got done counting, I had 128. Every major battle was 5 points. Every medal was 5 points. If you had 2 children, that's 10 points. And boy, they counted up. So,
now, when did you get your commission? When did they
pin
your bars on?
The temporary commission, they pinned it on me 3 miles back from the front. And it was kind of a sloppy way because I had no change of clothes or nothing. Still had the staff sergeant stripes on then, one bar in this shoulder, the other one in my pocket because he threw it in the ditch in the road. And when they started to shell with them big railway guns, mm-hmm. Geez, I know he never saw me, but when he come up out of that ditch, that officer, he was, it had rained the day before, so when it was pretty muddy, and I turned around so he wouldn't see me smiling. And I looked over toward my Jeep, and the Jeep driver stood right down in the seat. He was smiling too. And the way he hollered to his driver, get that thing turned around, the way he went. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And then they knew then I was in charge, but I never got really what you call a uniform and official swearing in till the week it ended. I was living in a chateau then with all the officers. The men were up on the hill, the pup guns. I got an awful, what made me want to get out of the Army as soon as possible, I got an awful chewing out from our colonel of the 777th Battalion was an Eagle colonel from West Point. When the war ended, I thought I had the 1st platoon, the 2nd lieutenant, and I thought I'd go down, get some prisoners out of the stockade, bring all the load of trucks with a load of bricks from the bomb buildings and lay them walks all around the pup tents so they could come out the pup tents on a walk all the way to the mess hall without walking in the mud. And those Germans, they even put these irons in, fancy. Didn't have to tell them nothing. Boy, they done the job. So then I said, we'll get some beer. Now the job is done. Not for the prisoners, took them back to stockade, but for the men. So we went to Weimar, Germany, and there's a big brewery there. First, he wasn't going to give us any. And the driver, he says, show me a pistol there, or something. But anyway, they was talking and in German pretty fast, and pretty soon 2 guys come rolling with 2 kegs, and they put them in the back of the Jeep. Well, we were drinking beer and having a good time, and the tent flapped open. This is in the tent up with the men. The tent flap opened, and there's the colonel's orderly. He said, "Lieutenant, the colonel wants to see you right now," down to his office. So I went down, and I walked in. He says, "Come in." I knocked on the door. He says, "Come in." And I walked right up in front of him and stood there, sort of. He never said a word. I don't know how long I stood there. So I was actually starting to sway a little. You can't, you stand at attention only so long. And then he said, "Butz, I understand you were drinking beer with enlisted men." I said, "Well, I slept in the same walls with these guys." And he said, he started in, "I'll tell you what you can do and can't do in this army as an officer." Boy, did he rake me over. So finally dismissed me. But after that, he seemed like a pretty good Joe. So, that's the way he was. And yeah, when I left there, everything was in good spirits. And shook hands with me, said, "Good luck."
When did you end up going home?
Well, they give me a Jeep and a driver, and they even said, "Now, Butch, your cousins are all living in this area, I understand. They know my record, my father's born there." I said, "Listen," they said, "take all the time you want on the way to Lahar. See if you can find your relatives." I said, "No," because I didn't know them, maybe they're all dead anyway, and that'd be, I don't care to do that. We got to Lahar and loaded the ship. They took our money away and gave us French money. The ship was getting fueled up. The next morning they said, "Everybody up, off the ship." I said, "What do you mean off the ship?" "They're going to give us back French money." Took American money back, and they says, "You're going to have to go and help guard a pipeline in Rouen, France. The wax have got priority. They want to get the wax out of there first," so they got the victory ship. So in the meantime, I wind up in Rouen, France, and with this first lieutenant, and it wound up him and I are going to take care of the whole company. Well, he was supposed to have been a captain, I was supposed to be a first lieutenant, but they were low staff, so as it turned out, it was good and bad, because I got caught with it right in the Jeep, and the MP took me in and said, "You take this here to your commanding officer," so I give it to him. And he's the one that sent me for the booze in this place. But I had it was written and shows where it was, so anyway, he just tore it up and laughed. But then the second time I got caught, the MP says, "Lieutenant, you're going to have to go to headquarters, follow me in headquarters." So we went into headquarters, and he says, "You wait here." And he opened the door, and geez, I kept looking. And I said, "Boy, the first thing I see was that 6 armored patch on his shoulder. I got the 6 armored too, you know." And I kept looking, then I see the mustache, and I said, "Oh boy, that's Major Smith, Snuffy Smith." So the guys tell him all about it. He says, "Send them in." So I'm starting down to him, and he looked up at me, and I see a little wink. And the sergeant started to walk away, the MP. He called him back. He says, "Hey, Sergeant, come here." He says, "This lieutenant here is on such secret business, I can't tell you what it is." He said, "Don't you ever stop him again, you understand?" "Yes, sir, yes, sir." He gave him a slope, and away he went. And I smiled, and Snuffy Smith said to me, he says, "Lieutenant, that's going to cost you 5 bottles." So we had a great laugh. But that's just how it come out. It's one of those things. And I thought the kids would like to hear about it, because that went in the book.
Now, did you know the major prior to that?
He was the one that I helped with the mines. The day I got wounded, but he didn't know I got wounded. Of course, it was healed up good, but then it didn't. It healed up fast. And then the Battle of the Bulge in France was hot. Bodies would blow. Now, just you men here, I guess I can tell you, if you had a wounded out there in no man's land, and at night you would go out there and try to get them back, retrieve them. And I'll tell you, if you want an experience, go buy a bloated body, and those cartridge belts are cut in so bad, that body sometimes will actually break wind. Yeah. And that's a scary, scary situation to be in, I'll tell you. But anyway, they come around and said, anybody want to volunteer for quartermaster? To get out of combat, you actually will not go in combat again. Pick up the bodies. Well, they finally got a guy from Brooklyn that says yes, he would do it. And what's the last I see of him? Except when I come back into Bastogne, Bastogne was now clear, and the 6th Armored used that for headquarters. And we were out past Margaret, plowing our way, but when we were waiting for supplies and stuff and dug in, I went back to Bastogne to get mail. And through this wooded area, where the tops was all gone in this forest, it was full of Germans, that's why they poured all that artillery in there. Well, here's a row of 6x6 trucks. And we're going along, somebody called my name. So I said, the Jeep got her back up. And here's this guy way back in the hot weather, volunteer. Now he's in charge of picking up the dead. He says, see this, I think there was 5 or 6 6x6. He said, this is the second trip in here. Second time we're filling up. And the men were bringing them out. Some are like this. I didn't see anybody straight, froze, just the way they were. If you're leaning behind a tree or something. And there was 2 or 3 laying there off to the side. But the guys say 1, 2, 3, and right up over the rack, and boom, if the truck was empty, it was just like a cord wood. They was all German. I didn't see any Americans in that bunch. But then he says, see these 3 here? Yeah. I bet you can't find a wound on them. He said, that makes about 6 I found. Not a mark on them.
Concussion?
It must be heart. But never nothing said in all the books you read. I had saw some down in Notting Breast, near Nancy. A couple. No, we couldn't find a mark on them, but they were dead. The only difference of those 3 that lay there, their face was funny color. The rest just like I was sitting here, only frosted up a little. Just rosy cheeks or whatever, if they weren't hit in the face. Yeah. But I don't know how many dead. And by the way, I wish I would have bought my certificate from the 6th Armored. It'd be very interesting for you. Anybody that was in the Battle of the Bulge were entitled to one. The 6th Armored, a few years back, sent me my copies. Has your name, rank, and quite a story about the Bulge. And all around the outside of this certificate is a shoulder patch of every outfit that ever served in the Battle of the Bulge. There might be duplicates, like I had an A for the 3rd Army and a 6th Armored patch. So there was one for both on them. But not all of them, but most of them were divisions. And you could see there was the Battle of the Bulge was a far bigger thing than most people realize. And now, did you see the news last night, was it? This guy with my same last name, Butz. Yeah. Professor saying there was no such thing as a, well, I could tell him a thing or so, because I took pictures in Buchenwald. There certainly was a concentration camp.
Now, were you aware of the concentration camps
no, we
prior
went
to that?
Run right in by accident. Yeah. Most of the pictures I took are faded pretty bad. They do come out a little bit. You can get them fixed, but the first thing we did, when we went in Buchenwald, opened the door, and there's a pile of wooden bowls And you need a hammer and chisel that were so hard baked into them bowls. I don't think they've been used for a long time. And flies will knock you down. Then I looked at, well, I call them shells, I never did. They might call them bunks. There was about 4 high. I don't think there was enough space between them. A guy with a good pair of shoulders, he couldn't turn over. He went in on his belly, he'd stay that way, I guess. But there'd be 4 or 5 in the shelf. And lots of cases, sometimes 3 dead ones. Lots of shells had 1 or 2 dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to the fellows, there's a window right here. I knocked the window out and handed out. We figured it might help save some. Pull the dead out before we got orders to move. And then the orders come in, they're going to paratube doctors and don't give them anything to eat or drink. And, you know, they just... some were walking around you, it's unbelievable. You could, you know, see the ribs and everything. And then the PX was beautiful. It was stocked with candy, American candy and tobacco and stuff like that. And guess what? If you pulled one out, they're empty. The back's cut raw open. The Germans took everything out of them and pulled it back, and they spoke. I heard the Red Cross okayed this place a few months before. Great big screen where they had movies, they never had a movie. But if you raise the screen up, and one of the guys that could talk broken English and French, he says, oh, raise the screen. There was 4 nooses. You pick the first 4 that come to them, that was the entertainment. Pull a lever there and drop the floor, and that was in there. And then, what else was it there? There were some potatoes buried. They were no good anyway, from what I see. But some of these guys look like ants, and you almost had to hit them or kick them to get through them, see what's going on. And they knew, and they were digging with their, and some of them were just bloody bones there where they tried to dig them potatoes. And the one that did get one, they was pushing in the mouth and died. They was in bad shape. But when we were 10 or 12 miles east of there, when we got the word, sent up the line that Eisenhower was going to make that town that was near Buchenwald, march, men, women, and kids, right, marched through, and they said about half of them fainted. Mm-hmm. They couldn't believe it, and that was pretty close. That's what they claimed, but they couldn't believe what was going on. But there was furnaces there where they burned the bodies, and they run them in them. There were 3 locomotive boilers, type furnace, and they were on a timer, and then they could run that iron rig back and dump it, and they go on another trough down into like a paper mill with 2 big rollers, and they roll that bones out and for bone meal fertilizer. They had a system. In one corner, the bowls were on this one. Down the other end, there was a big pile in the corner there, just glasses. That I don't know, that must have been thousands and thousands of pairs of glasses just thrown in a pile. From how many? But you know, I didn't see no Americans in that camp. We looked too to see. There were Polish, there were some Jewish, but mostly, I thought mostly Polish. Some Russian, yeah. And then I put it, well, maybe I better shut that off.
Well, no, that's all right. You hold that up.
This here, we had the 6 hour broke up now. Too many people have passed on, so there's not enough to hold. I went to one in Harrisburg. That was the nearest that I see one. That was years ago. But I was getting their paper once a month, and I cut a few things out from my scrapbook for the kids. And they remind me of Combat Command A, which I was in. And then New Year's, the 2nd and 3rd of January was probably the heaviest fighting we done the whole war, in the Battle of Bulge. Back and forth, back and forth. And then it says here, about Buchenwald. And where this is by the Signal Corps. Yeah, it says here, note the famous sign. Well, I didn't bring that as a big page picture, but they were talking about that sign, and here's the sign. We had that made. The 35th didn't like it, division, because when they come up to the bridge, we're already over, and the sign says you're entering Germany through the courteous of the 6th Army.
Just, can you...
It's a wonder they didn't take it down, you know, but it stood there for a long time. Down, there it is.
Okay. All right,
I should have brought a bigger.
that's coming through
I
upside
should have
down.
brought a bigger picture.
But anyway, okay.
No, we did.
We could copy it and blow it up.
Yeah, we'll make some copies of that and put them in the
Yeah, but I'd
file.
like to have these back.
Oh, yes, we'll give them right back to you.
Now, did you want, before you shut off, you want a picture of this?
Yeah, let me get that.
That's all right. Sure.
Yep. All right, I can zoom right in on that.
Can you see it all right?
Yep. Now, when did you actually go back to the States?
September 45,
Okay,
right after they dropped the bomb, the big one.
okay. All right, I got that. Now,
And then I got some good and bad news when I got released. I was giving the men classes 4 times a week of field stripping an M1 when I was in Rouen, France, waiting for a ship. But there was many ships come and went. There wasn't that, and nobody told me. And our captain told me personally. He says, "Now I can tell you." When he heard, when I said you're going to go on the next boat, he said, "Now I can tell you." We were scheduled for Japan, and they wanted me to get these guys so they could blind, and they could. It took a few weeks, but they would be blindfolded and field strip that M1, mix them up, put them all back in there together. Once in a while, a little mistake, but very good. You wouldn't think, would you? But I got a kick out of that. But that atomic bomb stopped all that.
let me go back a little bit. What was your reaction to the death of President Roosevelt? Did it come as a shock to you?
First we didn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
We thought, well, you know, the rumors come up and it's like everything else. But then we always said the war's going to go on, whether he's president or not. But it was kind of a hard thing, you know. And then, but Truman was then when he dropped the bomb with Roosevelt. I don't know. You know, you think later on you thought of things like that. I think somebody asked me, talking at a school in Albany, and the fellow was telling me that you fellows will soon be gone. You know, I don't really mean it the way it says it, but let's face the facts, and someday there won't be anybody to tell about it. And he's so glad I would come, you know. But if I knew it then, what you have here recorded, I'll have to let them know about it.
Sure.
Stuff that's being recorded. But anyway, one of them said to me, they give them 5 minutes of questions, and one said to me, what was the hardest thing for you in the war? And I thought about it, and I said, well, as a young boy comes a replacement, and I got him while we were on a 3-day or 2-day rest. The 3-day rest never turns out 3 days, it's always 1 or 2. They rush you, get everything in shape and go again. But anyway, he said to me, the first thing he said, now how long will it be before I'm a veteran? I said, if I'm talking to you the day after you're in combat, you're a veteran. And he replaced one of them gunners that was killed in the back of the half-track. And when we had a rest or stop where you could actually take a shut-eye for a couple of minutes, there he was. He even made a little broom out of stiff grass along the road and tied it on a piece of wood. to brush out the bottom of the half-track, empty shells and stuff. He wanted everything spotless so that nobody had slept, and he made sure the guns were in good working order. He was a guy, a kid. Each you knew, though, he was a kid you really liked. Well, we were dug in at a place waiting for, this is down the road, about 2 months later. And all of a sudden, they poured this 88 in on us. And he was working on the track, and when he jumped off, he went down. Well, I thought he just kind of tripped or fell. And I was a little ways away, and he called my name. So I ran over to him, and he was bleeding at the mouth. Well, from that experience before, you know, all I could do was hold that kid's hand and tell him he's all right. He'll be all right. I knew he wasn't going to last. He was gone in a minute. But he squeezed my hand. It's parts like that, and then anybody that's a sergeant, been a sergeant in combat for quite a while, anybody knows these guys write letters home and they always mention their sergeant, good or bad, I don't know, but they talk about their sergeant. So when you start losing men down the road, maybe it might be 2 or 3 months later, you get a letter. The mother of so-and-so that was in your company, and you were his sergeant, he spoke of you all the time. Could you tell me, did he suffer? Just how did he die? Mm-hmm. That's hard. I've started to write and tear it up and wait and maybe take 3 or 4 days to write some kind of letter back to them parents. That's hard. And another thing in war is when the shooting stops. Believe it or not. In the morning you pull out. You lay the barrage and everything like you usually do, and there ain't nothing there. Mm-hmm. They pull a fast one on us tonight, but they're getting ready, but you don't know where. And you might drive 2 hours. Every minute seems like an hour. Where are they? If they're shooting at you, you're a lot calmer. Everybody was jittery because when are they going to open up? What's the matter with them? That's a scary part of war too. You know, it doesn't sound right, but that was the way I remembered it. And Patton was right in a lot of things. Many a times it was safer behind the enemy than it was in front of them. It's hard to believe that one too. Mm-hmm. But I think if there's ever, I can't give her that figure, the total amount of casualties was no doubt in front, not when we cut behind. See, what he would do, Combat Command A, we'd cut in here, maybe take Schuylerville and Greenwich. Say we're coming from here. Combat Command B would head towards Cambridge. But when we got through them and by them, we would swing right and cut off many miles and hopefully a lot of prisoners. Mm-hmm. But the deeper you went, once in a while backfired. The Germans were stronger than they figured, and they tried to cut off that point, and there'd be an awful struggle there to get that straightened out. But most of the time, the man was right. A lot of them didn't like him. They says, yeah, blood and guts, yeah. Our blood and his guts, but I still can't help it. I still like him. I'm glad he was our general. I saw him, he gave a pep talk just before I come out of Germany. And it was his last official act for the 6th Armored Division to talk to him. They had already taken the 3rd Army away. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you that, I know he died from that accident, but I'll tell you, that man at age 20 years, when he came up to speak to us that day, they had to help him up on the wagon. We had a wagon set up for him to get up on so we could see over the troops. I said, boy, he is not in good shape. But that was his last official act of the Third Army. That broke his heart when they took. It all come about from cursing and swearing about. Now we ought to whip the Russians and that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, listen.
Now, when you were discharged, whereabouts were you discharged from?
That's a good question. I was in combat when I was a civilian because when they tried to say no, but yet I was acting as an officer at that bar. And you can't go from an enlisted man to an officer without 24 hours, which I found out later. And so when I was, by the way, when I went back for that test in Weimar, I was tipped off that major that I was going to see, to look over the papers, he was going to ask me one question for sure, and he said, you better know the answer. So what's that? And he tipped me off. He said, your new serial number as an officer. You know the old one by heart. Mm-hmm. But boy, I had to grab it. I had kept the 2 dog tags, and I had looked at that tag over. And he did, first thing he asked, and I reeled it off, and he didn't ask much after that. He said, you done good, I forget, 120-some points. Mm-hmm. That was because they couldn't find my, you have to be a graduate, high school graduate, with a diploma to get it, to be a commissioned officer, and that's what that was all about. Took the test and no problem.
Okay. When you got back to the States and were discharged, what fort were you at?
As a second lieutenant. You mean the rank?
Well, what fort did you?
Oh, Fort Dick.
Fort Dick.
Come in. No, wait a minute. I had to go back. Come into Boston. Mm-hmm. Took a train to New York City, and MP stopped me. Says, sorry, Lieutenant, but you're out of order. I said, why am I out of order? He said, I had the bars on and everything. You had OD clothes on. Well, I just got the new lieutenant's uniform, and I was packing the bag. Oh. But when I soon saw the papers, everything was okay. So that was at Penn Station. And I had to get the Grand Central to come to Fort Edward. And I waited for a cab and waited. They said, you can take a subway. I ain't never rode the subway, and I ain't going to take a chance on that. So finally, just women would get to the cab, and I'd back to the curb again. About 2 or 3 cabs this happened. Finally, the cab driver called me over. He says, where are you headed? I said, geez, I got to get to Grand Central. He says, ladies, this cabs are out. Geez. Open the door and that woman got out, and he says, you come out in front with me. And he says, Grand Central, I'll get you there. Boy, he zipped through that traffic in New York. We got there to the terminal. Let me right out the front door, and I said, where are you? He said, you don't owe me a thing. He said, I lost a son in this war. Never asked me for a penny. Boy, I thought that was so. So then I had to go back. After I was home 1 week, I guess he had more time then to go back to Dick's and get officially released. That's so I had to do that. Yeah.
Now, did you join any veterans organizations?
American Legion and Scotland. But no, I should have joined the Vietnam Foreign Wars. I never did, but I got there, I guess.
Okay, did you make use of the GI Bill at all?
I did the first house I bought in. I bought a 4%. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I never drew a penny on that. What they have there, 5220 club. No, I never drew a penny.
No.
I went right to work.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I can't think of. coming home was a victory ship, 1200, and did I get sick. They had chains for bunks, and them chains were snapping. Half of that ship was right out in space, and then, boy, they hit into that next dip, you know, and wow, they snapped the chains, and geez, I was sick. He didn't want to go around. They come out of the harbor and went shot right straight for Boston. We could hear the crew begging the captain to go around the storm. He wanted to set a record. I guess he did, 7 days. I think it was a record for that victory. They all said, well, I hope he's happy.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. You want to take a